Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in to a Wednesday edition of High School Football Alabama. I'm Tommy Wood, along with John Holder, as we get set for another week of high school football, and glad to have you with us. I know I'm a few minutes late. I had to ran behind schedule, but I hope you'll still get an opportunity to join us here on this afternoon, or maybe the recorded broadcast. And I hope that you get the opportunity to be with us and ask your questions, maybe give us your comments throughout the afternoon as we try to talk about high school football. And John, again, we head into week number 2 of the postseason, and really a great week 1, a lot of good ball games, but it's playoff time here in Alabama.
Yeah, I think the week 1, the thing that stood out to me was, and what people that I talked to are talking about, is the number of upsets we had in the first round. Typically, to be honest with you, round 1 in past years, the AHSAA football playoffs has got, it's got to be kind of like the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Right.
Very rarely, if ever, you never see a 16-1 in the NCAAs. You never see a 16 beat a 1. Very rarely do you ever see a 2 beat a 15. But last week we had 4s and 1s matching up with each other, and there were a lot of 4s, more than I can probably ever remember in all my years, of number 4s beating number 1s. A lot of those games happened in the eastern side of the state of Alabama because we had 2 regions where there was actually sweepage, if we can use that word, that went on. Iowa Athletic Association pointed that out because you had 4A Region 5, all 4 teams swept the first round, and I think it was 2A Region 5 also, that all the teams swept in the first round. So there were some big upsets involved with that, like Ranburne, number 4, going to Tarrant on Thursday night and winning that game. A very impressive win. You had Weaver going on the road, winning in overtime against Plainview, a number 4 beating a number 1 there. Cherokee County went on the road to Sardis, again a number 4 beating a number 1 there. So there were just a tremendous amount of big-time upsets in the first round, more, Tommy, than I can remember in past years.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, we want to thank you for joining us. And I already had a compliment on the shirt and tie. Look, I've been working all morning, so I had to rush in here. That's why we're late, so because we're actually doing some work and just came in. So thank you, Marcus, for the heads up. I'm not Steve Harvey, but we'll try and see what we can come up with. But I tell you what, it was a great week. And again, as you talk about the playoffs and you talk about a lot of great things, and I want to mention our sponsor, that is Kevin Moon at Cheehaw Music Company. It's in Clay County. You're looking for Christmas gifts, maybe some guitars, things like that, music equipment. Go to their Facebook page again, and we urge you to do that anyway, and just let them know you appreciate them sponsoring this program. We really are thankful that they're able to jump in there and help us out as we try to come every week and do these things. So we thank Kevin Moon, a great guy to know. We've been friends for a long time, and he's jumped behind this program. And we encourage you, if you are a business owner, a group, and you would like to help us out as far as continuing this broadcast, and we're not going to say we're going off the air or anything like that, but if you ever feel like you want to get your advertising out to so many people, again, we're averaging about 1,200 people every week to watch this program, and we thank you for that. That is huge. And so if you want to reach that many people, then we encourage you to do it. You can send us a little message there, private message me if you want to, and we'll tell you about it. Again, we work cheap, don't we?
Oh, you would not believe how cheap we work.
Free is about as cheap as you can get it.
I believe how cheap we work.
All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the brackets. And what we want to do today, I think, is just go 1A to 7A and talk about some of the games we've got. And I know yours is filled out.
I got them right here. So most people have it on the regular 8.5 by 11. I'll get real paper technical with you here. This is my 8.5 by 14 legal size.
I'm going to tell you, you see mine, I didn't have any of that paper when I was trying to print it out, so I had to shrink mine down a little bit. But we're going to hang in there and talk about some of the games. Class 1A, a couple of outstanding teams going head-to-head. And we'll start off with a good one here. Isabella 10-1 at 10-0 Wadley.
I think that's going to be a fantastic game. Probably, in my estimation, this is probably the best team that Isabella's had. This is a fantastic Wadley team. They're at the top of the state, not just in 1A, but in all classifications, in scoring and in points allowed. I don't think anybody, up until last week now, Pleasant Home came in and scored 18 points. I don't think they had given up more than 7, the entire season. Pleasant Home comes into Wadley last week and scores 18 points. However, they gave up 65.
There you go. There it is.
But still a very impressive win by Wadley last week. I think that's the premier matchup. You look at the 1A bracket here, there's some great games there. That is probably the best game, the game that has the most name recognition. You move on down and you got Brantley and Sweetwater. Very rare to see a Brantley-Sweetwater in the second round of the playoffs.
You know, and Sweetwater's been a quiet team this year. I mean, they're 9-1. Still not a lot of folks talking about them because, of course, Maples was dominant down in South Alabama. But
Maplesville gave us some points this week.
They did. I saw that. That was
Maplesville 28. I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, kind of surprising
to see that.
You know, Maplesville going to host Talladega County Central as they go down there, and also that is in the South region. So those are some big ball games, along with Marengo at Georgiana. Georgiana's still undefeated, so some interesting matchups in South 1A.
Yeah, and my understanding is the Georgiana-Winterboro game.
Yeah.
Serious things happened in the aftermath of that game, so there may be some news coming out from there. We understand there was, police were involved on the field with some of the things that happened in the post game after that involved players. Players leaving the bench areas, we understand it. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens, the ramifications of that. We're sitting here on Wednesday at 12 noon or so as we record this. And we'll see what happens with Georgiana. Yeah, very interesting. And I heard a lot about that last week. And it's been kind of quiet as far as waiting on an official result or any kind of news release, anything like that. But that is very interesting to be watching over the next several days as far as that shapes up on Friday night. Also in the northern half of 1A, Addison 9-2 at Hackleburg 10-1. You got South Lamar. And they're at Cedar Bluff. Both of those teams 8-3. Ivory Star for Cedar Bluff had a great ball game the other night. 134 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, and also a big interception there with about a minute left. I was at that game Thursday night. We were there for about a half against Waterloo. Waterloo was a team that really surprised me. Had not made the playoffs in 25 years, and they came in and took Cedar Bluff's best shot. Cedar Bluff was ahead in that game 27-7 midway through the second quarter. And they did not go away. As a matter of fact, came back, cut it to 27-21 at halftime, and it was close the rest of the way. Cedar Bluff still dealing with the injuries. That's the thing about them. The most healthy game they've had this year, Tommy, was probably that region title game win over Spring Garden. They beat Spring Garden 34-7, who's got a very good quality 1A football team. Shows you how powerful Cedar Bluff can be when they're healthy. Ivory Star still not 100%. He didn't play on every series. Isaiah Jones had another injury, suffered in the Sandrock game, last game of the regular season, so he's out again. They hope to get him back. They also lost Ross Johnson, who I think is one of the best football players in the state, on defense. And he was on crutches last week. So if they can get all these guys healthy, Cedar Bluff is a team that could win the North.
Yeah, that's a huge key. You talk about Spring Garden. Of course, they're still in it. Going to Pickens County this week, and Lynn undefeated. They will host Cherokee in the 1A North. And, talk about Luke Ivy of Spring Garden. I mean, this guy has really come out and played well. 7 of 10 last week, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns. And had 86 yards on 9 carries. And defensively, Brian Kelly recovers a fumble, also had an interception for Spring Garden.
I also saw Spring Garden play on Friday night. They were at home hosting Phillips of Bear Creek, and Spring Garden just really jumped on them. Phillips came out there and had 4 fumbles in the first half, and Spring Garden converted all of those into points, led 26-0 at halftime. Ivy, you see, only throws the ball 10 times, to be honest with you, is a lot for Spring Garden.
That's right.
So, but look at that, 70% completed 7 of those 10. And I think the most lethal play in the game that really knocked Phillips out was they fumbled a kickoff after a touchdown. That made the score. It was at that time it was 13-0. Then, or 14-0, they come back right after they recovered the kickoff, and Ivy on the first play throws a 29-yard beautiful strike into the end zone to Dylan Rogers for the touchdown. That made it 20-0, and you could just kind of see the air go out of Phillips at that point when they got down 20-0, and that came on the arm of Ivy. Again, one of those 7 passes he completed.
Hey, before we move to Class 2A, I want to remind you that we can see the comments that you post down low, so we encourage you to do that. We've got a Go Bulldogs coming in, and that is from Rhonda White. We appreciate you joining us. Stephen Wood is watching as well, and we encourage you to stay locked in throughout this live broadcast. If you've got a comment or a question, we encourage you to put that down there in the comments, and we'll try to tackle that and give you what knowledge that we can shed on it. We'll try to bring that to you. So we're going to move to Class 2A now, and when you look at that in the South half of Class 2A, Laverne 9-2. They are at 6-4. Aliceville, Leroy at Ayrton. Leroy 9-2. Ayrton 10-1. Now you talk about Ayrton. I was looking at Kate McCrae, 240 yards and 2 touchdowns last week, and that was the first playoff win for Ayrton since 2006.
And that is a team that has been very quiet as well. You know, Ayrton's sitting there, even though they're 10-1, they just barely made it into the state rankings at number 10. Again, Southeast Alabama doesn't get a lot of respect, and that lack of respect has kind of been earned because once they get in the playoffs, a lot of those teams in the Wiregrass don't do as well. But I think this is a good Ayrton team. Purple Cats moving on to round number 2, and I think that's going to be a great game with Leroy. You know, Ayrton's got a lot of tradition. They've had some great teams in the past. We certainly know Leroy has had tremendous teams, as good of a 2A program traditionally as there's been in the state. So I think that's a interesting matchup down in South Alabama. It's a long road trip. Leroy going away from the southwest corner to the southeast corner. Yeah. It's a long second-round road trip for the Bears going over to take on the Purple Cats.
And Leroy has a great running back as well, so a couple of good running backs going head-to-head here. Kelston Fikes of Leroy, 245 yards and 4 touchdowns last week. Carried the ball only 17 times, so a big night for him as the Bears defeated Elba 48-20. And watching that Elba program over the years, when they give up 48 points, you got to know that Leroy's offense is pretty stout.
Absolutely. We talked, I think, in week number 1 about how we impressed with Leroy, and to watch them, because it looked like Leroy was going to be back amongst the elite in Class 2A. Certainly feels like that's where they are. So there's some good. The South kind of seems to be in 2A, Tommy, a little bit wide open, but I still think the favorite in my mind is St. Luke's.
Yeah.
St. Luke's Episcopal out of Mobile. We've been talking about them all year long. You know, they were 5-5 last year.
Right.
And now look at them this year. Won a region championship, had another blowout win in the first round as they went in and beat, had New Brockton coming in, beat them 3 touchdowns. I think St. Luke's, in my mind, right now, week 2 of the playoffs, I think St. Luke's is my favorite to get to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, they've got Abbeville coming in this week, Abbeville 9-2, and then also Thorsby at Goshen, and that's your southern half of Class 2A. And as we look at the north, and again, geographically, it still blows my mind when we start talking about Reeltown being in the north. That just, to me, is just...
blows some of the teams there. It blows Falkville's mind, too, and some of those folks like that, you know, that Reeltown had to go to Falkville to play last week, and now you got Sullivan. It's going to have to come all the way from northwest Alabama down to Reeltown. So, you know.
Sullivan 10-1, Reeltown 7-4 there. But again, when you go to Reeltown, you better be ready to play some football coming up Friday night.
Tough place to play. Reeltown flexing their muscle again, showing how strong 2A Region 5 is as they go on the road and beat a pretty good Falkville team, and did that in a dominant fashion. Speaking of teams in the north that went on the road and won against a really great football team. We mentioned them earlier, the Ranburne Bulldogs.
Absolutely.
Shows how strong this region is. I think we knew Lafayette was good. We knew Lynette was good. We knew Reeltown was good. And we thought Ranburne was pretty good. And Ranburne showed that going over to Centerpoint High School and playing Tarrant Thursday night. Winning that game, I mean, it was 28-12. That was a dominant performance by Ranburne. They're coming back home now to play Lamar County over at Ranburne. And I just think it speaks to how strong this region is.
It really is, and when all 4 teams advance there, that is huge. And you talk about Aaron Benefield for Ranburne. He had all 4 of the touchdowns. Just a tough runner. Got a couple of moderately long runs, but man, the power game for Ranburne was going on both sides. And I know Hayden Simmons defensively was playing strong, and I think defensively it was a fun game for the folks at Ranburne. Had a chance to talk to some of them this week, and they've got a tough one in Lamar County coming in. But Ranburne, even though you're talking about a team that's 5-6. You've got a team that feels like they've got a lot of confidence right now. They've been playing better down the stretch, and Ranburne could advance to the next round, and they'll get another shot at the net.
I think so. Lamar County coming in at 7-4, so they're not world beaters. They finished the regular season 6-4, in not as tough of a region, and not playing the type of schedule that Ranburne has played. So I look for Ranburne to pull out a win, and then you mentioned Ranburne and Lynette.
If they get by Sandrock, obviously.
If they get by Sandrock. But that's the expectation. Both of those teams will be favorites there. But, again, that region has always been.
Right.
You go back 20 or 25 years. May not have always been 2A Region 5. It might have been 4. It might have been 5. But that area over there, even when you took away Lineville and Clay County, then you have Lynette moving down and Lafayette moving in there. And then your Woodland, who's in the past has been very good, and Ranburne's been very good, and Reeltown and all that. So,
and then Randolph County moved
to 3. Moving to 3. Randolph County was good
and
won a state championship out of there. So, I mean, the quality of football played in that part of the state, even with Lineville and Clay County consolidating and moving up, it really hasn't missed a beat.
No, it really hadn't. Still strong region, and they continue to move out. And you talk about, of course, Lamar County at Ranburne, San Roque at Lynette, and of course, Fife and Lafayette. To me, I know that Fife is a machine, but I really think that Lafayette could give Fife some trouble. I think as far as team speed, and you got folks like Robert Houston. He had 225 yards last week. Fife is going to have to slow him down, but man, when you got Peyton Anderson, you can get some stuff done.
Well, this is the thing when you play. Lafayette has got the athletes. There's no doubt about it. But there's two things when you play Fife. One thing, the first thing and foremost is you have to be so disciplined on defense because you do not play against an offense that is built like Fife is. Right. And it is so hard to play that kind of disciplined defense. And then you also have to get ready for a team that's going to throw the ball less than 10 times a game, which is rare in this day and time, even in high school football. And then the physicality of Fife as well. They are going to come out and get physical. They're going to run the football. They're going to pound it. And they are going to be very disciplined. They're not going to give you anything. Turnovers are a rarity. Penalties are a rarity.
Absolutely.
So you got to go out and you got to beat them. You got to be physical and you got to be disciplined to do it.
Having broadcast a few games at Fife over the years, let's talk about that. That is a tough place to win a ball game.
Yeah, because the entire town is out. And now with a lot of the teams, Plainview being knocked out by Weaver, we'll talk about that in a few moments. Then you get people from the surrounding communities who come in there from, Crossville and Plainview and places like that come in to watch the game because it's the only game on Friday night in the area. And they're going to be pulling for Fife as well, but just the Fife fans. I've been to games up there as well. They're going to not only pack the stands, they're going to be standing on the fence, they're going to be vocal. The expectations at Fife, as you can imagine, with the success they've had, are absolutely off the charts. And so there's an air of confidence.
It is.
When you walk into Long Ridgeway Stadium in Fife, there's an air of confidence that you just don't get in many places in high school football.
What's your top game in 2A? What are you seeing as the big game to see this weekend?
I really think, to me, as I look at that, I think that the Lafayette-Fife game that we talked about could be the top game. Now, no offense to the folks down in Chambers County, I'm not going to be surprised if Fife blows that open.
Right.
But it could be the best game, I think, out there, potentially on paper anyway. Maybe the two most talented teams will use that with each other as well. But you might want to watch. I noticed we had a fan that checked in from Thorsby with the Rebels.
Yep.
The Thorsby-Goshen game is not bad. Thorsby's 8-2, Goshen's 10-1. That's not a bad game either, as Thorsby travels down to Pike County to take on the Eagles. So that's another game to watch in the South that we didn't talk a whole lot about. And they're maybe not getting the publicity as some of these other schools are, but that could be a very well-played game down there as well.
Yeah, I think that 2A Region 5, they're going to have their work cut out for them this week. Reeltown bringing in Sulligent. That's going to be a tough one. Ranburne, Lamar County, I don't know. I got a feeling that we may see Ranburne advance there.
I do.
I got a feeling that they can move on. Lynette, I think them in San Roque, you got to think that the Panthers are the favorite there, but that Fife-Lafayette game just sticks out to me in Class 2A. So, again, some more Thorsby Rebel fans jumping in there. We appreciate you joining us.
They're having a great season.
They really are.
Great season.
Man, they've been...
Chilton County football this year. Maplesville, Thorsby, Isabella.
Absolutely.
It has been a phenomenal season.
Been a really good year. All right, let's move to Class 3A, and we'll take a look first off at our southern half of the state. You got Gordo 10-1 at Mobile Christian, 8-3. I think Mobile Christian getting a little bit healthier, so we'll see how that shakes out there. But that should be a great matchup. Clark County 9-2 at Wicksburg 10-1. I think that's going to be a good one too, John.
And that if there's a team in this state that probably is under the radar, it's probably the Wicksburg Panthers.
Yep.
Not a lot of tradition there. Last year made a little bit of noise as they went first round of the playoffs and went over to T.R. Miller. And so it kind of raised a little eyebrows. But then this year, they have been unbelievable. They're 10-1, ranked number 9 in the state. But they have Clark County coming in.
Yep.
And at this point in time, the South is getting a little bit interesting.
It really is.
Mobile Christian had everybody back, the defending champs, but then they lost 3 games with all those injuries. And they got Gordo in round 2 because of that. I didn't expect, I thought in the summer, probably Gordo and Mobile Christian will be your semifinal like it was last year.
Right.
That was, but now we're getting this in the second round, and you get your Clark County Wicksburg game. Then you look down, you got a nice game, 2 8-3 teams, American Christian and Montgomery Academy, not to mention Oakman and Hillcrest Evergreen. Those, to me, Tommy, those 4 games in the South
Go
are
either way.
toss-up games.
I think so.
All 4. How many times do you see 4 toss-up games
Yeah.
in the second round?
Yeah, I'm with you. I looked over these 4 up here, and I think that this may be the most wide open, southern part of the state classification matchups that we're going to see. So I think that one, to me, is very interesting when you look at the South in 3A. Looking at the North, Sylvania 10-1, they are at 10-1 West Morgan. You got Randolph County 10-1, they are at Fultondale. Interesting game there. We'll talk about that in a second. Colbert Heights 10-1 at 7-4 Weaver, and J.B. Pennington 9-2 at 10-1 Piedmont. So some interesting games there too.
Well, if you go by state rankings, obviously the marquee game in the state would be that Fultondale Randolph County game at Fultondale. Again, though, it's going to be interesting because Fultondale not in a very strong region at all, and Randolph County in a very strong region. They have seen it all, not only play, they play in 5As for their non-region games.
Right.
I mean, they, and not to mention your Piedmonts and Weavers and Ohatchees that they're playing along the way. So this is going to be a tremendous, I think it's a great matchup over there. But I still say, even though they're on the road and even though Fultondale is undefeated, in my mind, I still think Randolph County is the favorite in this game.
Yeah, I think even though they're going on the road to Fultondale, which can be a tough place to play, I think that they are battle tested. I think this is a team from Randolph County that they have handled all comers, at one at a time, and they continue to get better every week. And even though they've got that loss again that's sticking out there from Piedmont, this is a good football team, and I'm with you. I think Randolph County is going to get that win. Anything from 3A shocked you last week? I think Ohatchee, to me, was kind of a surprise.
Well, I really was surprised because Ohatchee does something uncharacteristically. They had turnovers in the game, and Sylvania gave them great advantage of that. They took advantage of that, and they won the game 37-14. I wasn't shocked Sylvania won the game, but I was surprised winning that game by 23 points.
Yeah.
That did surprise me. And I think everybody in 3A talking about, and again, no one should be shocked that Weaver went to Rainsville and beat Plainview. They should not be shocked. The resiliency of this Weaver team. And in a lot of ways, I know folks down in Grove Hill and Mobile and Gordo and places like that, Weaver may not be on your radar screen. But let me tell you, this team on a given Friday night is capable of beating any team in 3A by evidence of the fact that they played Piedmont to a 6-point game.
That's right.
And then you see what they did to Plainview. They went up there, and at any time they were down 15-7, tied it, 22-22 going to overtime, down 29-22. Then they come back and score and go for 2 and win the game on the road. Just a really impressive performance. I think that, to me, is maybe the biggest win that Weaver's had in a decade, probably about 10 years. And now they get to come home, and I would tell the folks up in the folks up there in Northwest Alabama, if you're listening to us in Colbert County, Colbert Heights fans out there, making that trip to Bill Bryan Stadium at Weaver, you may not have ever heard of Weaver. Let me tell you, Colbert Heights got a great team.
Yeah.
But you are going to run into a really good football team Friday night out at Weaver.
Yeah, you can, again, as they like to say, throw the record books out. I mean, when you see these records of a lot of these teams, you're going, well, they're only 7-4. They're only 5-6. You got to look at the regions they come from. You got to look at who they lost to, and you also got to take into consideration maybe there's some health issues, maybe some players were out a couple of games. So a lot of factors could go into that record.
Yeah, Weaver's a great example of that in the region with Piedmont and Randolph County and Ohatchee and all those folks, and then played their last regular season game against Sax, who's undefeated, number 3 in Class 4A.
Joining us here, and
so I mean, the schedule has been tremendous. Beat a 5A in their opening, a 5A playoff team, their opening game. Weaver did so. Very good.
Hey, and thanks for joining us here again. Some Maplesville fans jumping in, and John, we'll give them our normal Maplesville salute, which is 4 Pete for the Red Devils. We'll keep an eye on them throughout the postseason.
4 Horsemen?
No, not in this case. No. It's our Maplesville salute as we expect them to fully be in Tuscaloosa in a few
28
weeks.
points to Linden, though. That did concern me.
It did concern John. We talked a little bit during the week, and he's still staying with you. And we talked about it earlier that the points they gave up were kind of surprising.
But they did score 49 also.
Exactly. So, again, we'll keep an eye on those Red Devils throughout the playoffs. All right, let's take a look at 4A. As we get in there, we're going to take a look at Tallahassee at Bibb County. Both of those teams 10-1. Also, you got UMS Wright 9-2. They are at Montgomery Catholic. WS Neal 6-5. Upset last week. They will be at Alabama Christian. And St. James 8-3 at 10-1 Andalusia.
I think the biggest shocker to me in the entire state last week, 1A through 7A, was W.S. Neal coming to Munford and winning. And Munford jumped on top 12-0. As we talked about last week, W.S. Neal had made that trip in 14 and in 15. I was at both of those games, and I just didn't see anything to make me pick W.S. Neal to come up here the third time against probably what was the best of all those Munford teams. Then Munford jumps on top 12-0, and you think, give all the credit to W.S. Neal, though. They come back 14-12. Munford's driving, pick 6 to seal it, win it 21-12. Very impressive win. We talk about some of these tough regions like 2A Region 5, 4A Region 5, 3A Region 5. How about 4A Region 1?
Yes.
That's as good of a region as there is in the state as well.
Big time answer last week as you look in the southern half. And you're looking at games this week. I think that Tallahassee-Bibb County game is shaping up to be a great one.
I think so. And I think also the game that's going to be really overlooked, that's a dangerous game for UMS coming to Montgomery because also, in the summer, we sit and talk. And we talk with folks from around the state. We run into folks and read stuff and all that. And there's a lot of folks saying, I heard this summer, I kept hearing, man, you better look out for Catholic. Yeah. Montgomery Catholic. Right. Montgomery Catholic. I mean, they've never been really a great power at Montgomery Catholic. I'm telling you, Montgomery Catholic, they got some players. They got a great team. They're going to be good. Montgomery Catholic, I sit here right now, they are 10-1 with UMS Wright coming to town. It's a dangerous football game for the Bulldogs coming up to Montgomery.
That's going to be a good one, too. You're right. In the northern half, you talk about Class 4A. Rogers still undefeated, 11-0. They are at Hoax Bluff. And Landon Johnson for Hoax Bluff, 63-yard game-winning run. He was complete 6 of 15 passes, 79 yards. He had 3 tackles, had an interception. And, of course, Eagles get the win over Madison Academy. And how often do we go through brackets and we don't see Madison Academy listed? That's news for 2017.
Well, Coach Mike Robertson at Hoax Bluff, he said last week, we ain't talking about revenge. Revenge is not on our mind. There's no revenge. Right. Let me tell you, it may not have been for Coach Rob. I would never doubt him. But I'm telling you, those players, I think, after the way they lost last year in the state semifinals, trip to Auburn on the line, and Madison Academy comes in and kicks a field goal with 1:38 to go in the game to seal that and send them on to Auburn. Those guys like Landon Johnson, Darian Meads, Braylon Hill, all those guys, Levi Talaferro, all those guys were thinking that. That was Hoax Bluff had a huge crowd up at Madison as well. Big crowd that they took up there. This is a hungry football team, not only to get back and try to get back to the Super 7, but a hungry football team specifically to beat Madison Academy. Real impressive win by Hoax Bluff last week. As we talked about 4A Region 5 flexing the muscle last week because they went 4 for 4.
Jacksonville, 8-3.
Dangerous
Big
team.
win last week. And Macy Carr, 153 yards and touchdown. 43-13, they get that win over Randolph. And they're rewarded with a trip to Fayette County, who's 9-2.
Always Fayette County has beaten so many teams from this eastern side of the state through the years. And they have no doubt. Here's the thing. I think it's right here with Jacksonville.
I agree.
Jacksonville's got the players. I will tell the Fayette County folks that might be watching, no doubt, ask Coach Tucker and your coaching staff. They'll tell you Jacksonville has the players to win. The difference, I think, is there's so much tradition at Fayette County, where Fayette County has been in this position so many times, so many state championships and state championship games and semifinal games. And at home, there's no doubt in their mind, there's not a person in Fayette that doubts they're going to win this game.
Right.
Jacksonville has never won a second-round game ever in history. They've been to the second round many times, but they've never been able in the history now. Jacksonville High School has been playing football since 1925, so playoffs, they've never been in over 50 years past the second round ever.
Right.
Clint Smith and the Eagles, they got an opportunity to go and win the game. I think it comes down to tradition.
Yeah.
And can they overcome that Fayette County tradition and go pull the win off at Fayette?
Do you make history or are you a victim of it?
Yeah.
That's a deep thought of the day there. I have no charge for that.
Yeah.
So can Jacksonville go in there and get the big win again as they go to Fayette? Wilson 10-1 at 5-6 Cherokee County. Talk to me about Cherokee County last week.
Cherokee County, I picked it.
Yeah.
I really thought. I talked with Coach Trip Curry last Thursday, on their show last week. I was leaving Oxford, going to their pep rally, talked with Coach Curry at the pep rally, and he was confident that they could go in and win that game, and indeed they did as they beat Sardis last week, who was a region champion, at the Lions Den at Sardis. And it was 21-14, but Cherokee County pretty much dominated this game. And this is another one of those teams. The schedule has been unbelievable. You look at Cherokee County's record; they're 5-6. Right. Wilson sitting there 10-1. Their only loss to Rogers. Wilson. I'm sending. This is warning week. I'm sending some warnings out, like I did with UMS and all these teams. I'm telling you, I know the folks up in Lauderdale County may not know a lot about Cherokee County. They got a fantastic quarterback in Tyron Dupree and a fantastic middle linebacker who's a tackling machine in Riley Russell. And playing at home, they got a lot of tradition, more tradition than Wilson does. And they have played a schedule where they have lost to Cedartown, Georgia, who would be a 6A if they were in Alabama, a good 6A. They lost to Piedmont. They lost to Hoax Bluff, who we just talked about. They lost to Jacksonville. They lost to Sacs. Right. That's their 5 losses. Let me tell you, 5 of their 6 losses. There's a lot of football teams. There's a lot of football teams that would lose to those teams.
That's right.
So this is another pretty dangerous team. Wilson coming into center on Friday night.
Yeah, you look at that, and again, and I wonder, when you're talking about playoffs, and you got teams, and you got not really so much coaches, but you got a lot of players, and when they look, go, oh, Cherokee County's 5-6, and they immediately start looking to the next round. Yeah, a lot of fans are guilty of doing that too, because you see that record and you go, okay, well, we'll easily beat them. Let me tell you, that's not always the case. And again, we got to go back and look at all those factors we were talking about.
And, oh, by the way, that 6th loss. Carver Birmingham.
Yeah, there you go.
So there you go. I mean, there's a lot of teams in most teams in 4A would be 5 and would have 6 losses against those teams.
One team that does not have any losses. We got a fan joining us a few minutes ago from Sacs, 11-0, the Wildcats. We talked a couple of weeks ago. We did not rule out the Sacs and Munford State Championship game. We can rule that out now because Munford is not going to be there. Can the Sacs Wildcats make a run and get there themselves as they will host Dora this coming Friday night? LaDerrick Bell of Sacs, 3 touchdowns last week. 42-21, they double up Westminster.
I know Rogers is 11-0. We'll find out a lot. You get deeper in the playoffs and you find out a lot. There's really nothing to compare a Rogers or a Sacs or anyone. Well, I mean, we're going to find out a lot this week about the Northwest teams as they come down to this part of the state. I tell you, Sacs, in my mind, is the favorite out of the North. I think, in my mind, because they have every piece, as we talked about last week, they have every piece in place. Plus, one of the big things is with Sacs, not only do they have all the pieces in place to get there, but Tommy, they're playing well right now. They're playing very, very well. They led that game against Westminster 42-7 at one point. The week before that, they beat this Weaver team 51-12. They are playing the best, which is what you want. Jonathan Miller and his team playing the best football they played all year long right now.
Again, we're going to move into 5A in just a moment. I want to remind you of our sponsors again, Kevin Moon at Cheehaw Music. We invite you to go ahead and give them a like on their Facebook page following our live broadcast here today. Also, another great sponsor, and that is Lee Marketing Group. They're out of Alexander City. And if you've got a business and you want to promote that business, maybe screen printed T-shirts, embroidery, maybe you've got the vehicles you need wrapped, they can do that as well. They make signs. They do all kinds of stuff. They can help design a website for you. Any of those things that you need, go to leemarketing.net and you can find out more about them. We appreciate their sponsorship of High School Football Alabama. Moving to Class 5A, John, and we're going to dive in here. First, we'll take a look at the southern half as we've been doing through all the brackets. Calera and Beauregard. Beauregard last week pushed to the limit. They get a late field goal to win by 3, but they're 9-1. They do survive, and they are going to be welcoming Calera this week.
That was a revenge game, too. Greenville had handed Beauregard their only loss, first game of the regular season way back in August. And so you're thinking, well, now Beauregard, they're going to be at home, and they're just going to wear Greenville out.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen. They've kind of just had their number, but they do survive and go on to take on Andrew Zhao and the Calera Eagles.
Yeah, Quindarius Cruz of Calera, he caught a game-winning 10-yard touchdown pass from Cornelius Brown on the final play of the game. So a couple of nail-biters. You talk about it, last play of the game, Calera gets a touchdown pass. If you didn't see that video, it was a tremendous catch in the back of the end zone. And you got Beauregard, Ricardo Mendoza hitting a 37-yard field goal on the game's last play. So a couple of last-second victories for these two teams as they go head-to-head down there in the Hornets' nest of Beauregard coming up Friday night.
And, Tommy, we don't get much right, but we got this right. We said last week that we thought Talladega had a chance to go into Ozark and give Carroll, who was undefeated, number 2 ranked team in 5A, a lot of problems. And they did. They very nearly won the football game, which again, I think shows Southeast Alabama Wiregrass maybe not quite as strong as some of the other areas around the state, because Talladega goes in as a 4 team, loses to an undefeated number 2 ranked team in the state by only 6 points at 12-6. So Carroll now going to be at home again in Ozark, but there's an entirely different animal coming to town now with St. Paul's Episcopal coming in.
What a tradition-rich program in St. Paul's, and again, they're going to come in 10-1. They will be at Carroll Friday night. And I've seen St. Paul's a couple of times over the last several years. What a program. I mean, it just continues to reload each and every year. And before I jump into that, I want to talk just a second. Ted Darby, I mean, if you've got a coach of the year around this area, he's got to get a lot of votes for what he has done in Talladega.
I think he has to be in consideration for maybe the 5A coach of the year. I mean, Talladega, first winning season, first playoff appearance since the mid-1990s, folks. Let's think about this. No players on the team even alive, I mean, at all, period, the last time. No one could, most folks, you'd have to be probably, close to 30 years old if you live in Talladega to even remember the last time Talladega had a winning season go to the playoffs. So the job he did, I think he is certainly worthy of a lot of Coach of the Year honors that he may be under consideration for.
And got that city behind the program. I understand they had a great crowd last week. So, again, hats off to Ted Darby and the Talladega Tigers. As we stay in 5A, you got Central Clay County 8-3. They will be at Demopolis. Got a road trip there, over there. So they will go take on Demopolis Friday night. I had a chance to check out Central Clay taking on Charles Henderson. You had a 82-yard touchdown run by Paul Garrett to kind of break things open for Central Clay, but a game that was it was a pretty ugly game. Just to be honest with you, Charles Henderson, I think at one count had 8 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, and it kind of got out of hand, got into one of those situations where you kind of get afraid toward the end of the game for the players to have a lot of interaction. It was about to, the officials really had trouble keeping control of this ball game, but in the end, Central Clay gets that win, so they move on to the next round as they take care of Charles Henderson. And I think on the road at Demopolis, tough game. Demopolis 9-2, and they are playing some great football and had a great season once again.
It's just one of those games that there's not anything really to compare it to.
Right.
So you sit here and you're thinking, they're about equal in records. They both had impressive wins last week. Demopolis beat Williamson 21-0. A great win by probably, I think, in my mind, maybe the most impressive win by Clay Central this year.
I agree.
Beating Charles Henderson. So both teams are obviously playing well, but there's just so little to compare to know what's going to happen when Clay Central goes to Demopolis. That's why I love, because usually by the time we get to the semifinals, we kind of got things sort of figured out. Regular season, we think we got things figured, but in the first, second, and quarterfinal rounds of the playoffs, there's just so much we just don't know, and it's fun to watch it unfold.
Yeah, the first 2 meetings between the schools, again, because they have never faced each other, but going to be a fun time on Friday as Central Clay goes to Demopolis. And rounding out Class 5A in the South, Eufaula 9-2. They will be at 8-3 Viger. And Eufaula, one of those programs that, down for a while, up a while, down a while, and they are putting it together here in 2017. 236 yards rushing last week for Joe Green. He had 4 touchdowns. Also, his teammate, Zai Tennille, had 153 yards and 3 scores. Eufaula comes from behind, defeats Sylacauga 48-31. They didn't allow defense pretty much in that ball game. It was kind of like watching, some of these old Western Athletic Conference games.
And if there's a game to me that stands out as far as name value, name recognition, as far as traditional powers of high school football, it's that Eufaula Viger game. I mean, when you start talking about the tradition at Eufaula, the tradition at Viger, 9-2 versus 8-3, Eufaula, earlier this year beat Clay Central. So we're talking about obviously an excellent football team. I think that's to me, I'm kind of I went to a small school, but I kind of grew up really on what was the old Class 3A and the 4 classes. And when we were 6 classes, 5A to me was always the epitome to me of high school football in Alabama.
Yeah.
And when you talk 5A football, Fall and Viger.
Yeah.
I mean, those are just blue bloods.
Back in the day, buddy. That was it.
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I got someone commenting there talking about Tallahassee Tigers and the job that Coach Battles has done there. And the Tallahassee Tigers, again, a big ball game coming up this Friday night as they are continuing their quest. And make sure that game is it's at Bibb County. Both teams 10-1, but Coach Battles another great job.
Well, we talked about blue bloods, and we'll talk about bloodlines. Mike Battles, his dad's the head football coach at B.B. Comer, former head football coach at Hanley, won a state championship there.
Wearing shorts.
Great
Wearing shorts year-round.
Great teams at Pascagoula, Mississippi. Great teams at Walter Welborn, a couple of different times at Welborn. And they play hard-nosed, tough football. That's the way Mike Battles Jr. is going to be as well. He's had a great coaching career also.
Yeah, absolutely.
And getting it done now at Tallahassee. Tallahassee has now become one of those perennial, I think, powerhouses, we can say, in Class 4A football. And coming out of that region now, coming out of Class 4A Region 3, that same region that Munford and Leeds and Dadeville and all those kind of folks in there, Tallahassee was a team that was right there, and I think Tallahassee is one of those teams because they played such a tough schedule. I think Tallahassee is a team that can make some noise, even though they're not going to be at Hot O'Brien Stadium. They're going to be over in Centerville playing the Choctaws. Even away from home, making that road trip, I still think Tallahassee, in my mind, is the favorites to win that game.
Yeah, a lot of purple going to be in that place that night. I'll tell you what. And talking about the elder Coach Battles, I remember a game between Hanley and Leeds, and it was 20 degrees, and he's still wearing those shorts up down the sideline. And
I've seen Coach Battles one time when he was not in shorts. And that was when he went into the Alabama High School Sports Hall of Fame. They make you wear a tuxedo.
All right, that explains.
That's the only time.
I was going to say, I bet he had a sport.
I made sure to go to the Athletic Association website that night because I knew they would have pictures. I said, I got to see this.
Yeah.
Got to see it.
How about that? Yeah. All right, continuing Class 5A as we roll on. Thanks for the comment there, by the way. And we appreciate it. Olin Bradley out of the Tallahassee area. Thanks for joining us. And we have to lean up to make sure we can see it. But if you've got comments, we encourage you to post those as we continue to look at Class 5A. Mae Jemison 10-1 there at St. Clair County. We'll continue to look at the north here. Winona 9-1 at Mortimer Jordan. Brooks at Etowah and Briarwood Christian at Lee of Huntsville. Coming up.
Some teams there that we don't typically see there in Class 5A. For instance, Mae Jemison, because they've only been a school for a couple of years, but been very impressive. Lee of Huntsville, a team I saw in the spring up at Jack State, was a very talented team. They're sitting here now in the state playoffs, getting their shot at number 1, Briarwood. But also another team in there, St. Clair County.
Right.
St. Clair County goes to Guntersville last week, Chorba Stadium on the lake. Guntersville has not given up a point in 5 games. I'm talking a point in 5 games against some good teams like Alexandria, folks like that. They go a half, 21-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
Guntersville's ahead of St. Clair County. So now they've gone 5.5 games without giving up a point. Yep. And then in the third and fourth quarter, St. Clair County exploded for 28, Tommy, and they win the game over Guntersville. That may have been the most impressive win by anybody in 5A last week with St. Clair County doing what they did. And now they come back home to Odenville with a chance to take on a very talented Mae Jemison team. Another game that I'm looking at. This is the game that I'll be at Friday night. Brooks and Etowah.
There you go.
Whew, I think that's going to be a phenomenal matchup. And I'll tell you why, Tommy. Because Etowah has got, and they're all juniors.
Right.
Etowah's got a phenomenal defensive line. I've seen them play once this year, and they've got the Garmin kid on the outside.
Right.
They've got Jesse Altman at nose guard, the Howard kid on the other side. They have got a big-time, couple of those guys are big-time college prospects as juniors, defensive line. They shut people down.
Exactly.
Brooks has Cameron Stutz.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
We've seen him. He's 6'8",
He's a mountain.
about 325 pounds, something like that, already committed to play for Auburn. So, man, the matchup I'm excited to see. When I knew we were probably going to have a Brooks-Etowah matchup, and it would be at Etowah, and I would get to see that game. There was no doubt where I was going to be because I want to see that Etowah defensive front taking on that Brooks offensive front, especially with Cameron Stutz, and just see, all right, let's see what's going to happen here. Who's the real deals here? And I think that's going to be a great game.
Giving some love down in the trenches there. Again, that's going to be a great matchup. And you talk about Briarwood. I want to mention Carson Eddy caught a 48-yard touchdown pass on the first offensive snap, added a 55-yard touchdown catch on the next possession, and finished with 3 catches, only 117 yards last week. 62-0, they defeat Crossville.
Yeah, that was expected there. Briarwood, number 1, and I've heard just a lot of tremendously impressive things about this Briarwood team. Back in the summer, my picks in the summer in our Pigskin Roundup magazine that we do, my 5A championship game, I had picked St. Paul's against Briarwood. Mm-hmm. So far, that's looking pretty good, but we got a long way to go.
Hey, 2 classes left. Speaking of how much we have to go, we're talking about Class 6A football now. We'll take a look at the bracket. First off, you got in the South, Hillcrest Tuscaloosa at Saraland, Park Crossing at Opelika. You got 10-1 Wetumpka at Carver Montgomery, and Sidney Lanier at Spanish Fort. So you look at the southern half, some pretty good matchups there. Of course, Saraland, you got Jack West. He had 204 yards passing last week, a couple of touchdowns, and ran for a touchdown as well. Spartans beat Benjamin Russell 35-7. That kind of surprised me. I thought that game might be a little closer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it speaks to, we've been talking all year long about 6A football, especially 6A in the South, and how strong it is. And we've made the comment probably every week on here that we felt like there were 13 or 14 teams that were capable of getting on a run and maybe going all the way to Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Right.
I think that's still true after week 1 of the playoffs. I think Saraland is one of those teams with Jack West at quarterback. Anytime you got an elite quarterback, guys that's going to sign with Stanford, at any level of high school football, you got a tremendous advantage right off the bat then. And I tell you, I think that, I thought I had 6A sort of figured out, Tommy.
Yeah.
So I thought I had 6A sort of figured out. First round of the playoffs, I don't have anything about 6A figured out because that 35-7, I didn't see that one coming.
Didn't see it coming.
You Park Crossing, what they did to Bessemer City. And then, we'll talk about the North here in just a moment, but not so much who won the games, but the margins of these games, like Sidney Lanier just beating Paul Bryant by a point. That surprised me a little bit because I thought Sidney Lanier might have a bigger win than that. And it's starting to, I tell you where I'm going with this as we get into the North here in just a second. I'm starting to think that Oxford, even though they haven't played that tough of a schedule, the ones that they did play, what they're doing, folks like Hillcrest, Tuscaloosa, folks like that, I'm starting to think that maybe Oxford's schedule, the non-region's a little bit tougher than I even thought it was.
Yeah, I think so. That Hillcrest is the one that keeps speaking volumes to me.
Yeah.
And you look at that, and the night that Oxford played Hillcrest, I mean, it was, Oxford pretty much dominated that game from the word go. So I'm with you. I think that says a lot about Oxford. When we take a look at the North, of course, they've got a tough game coming up this week. 9-2 Muscle Shoals coming in. Muscle Shoals, the 2 losses to Spain Park, who's 7A, and top-ranked Austin. The only 2 games they've lost. So Muscle Shoals, to me, is still an outstanding football team. They're coming into Oxford, and we talked very briefly a little bit about revenge factor. And
it's hard to say that there's a rivalry between schools that are 3.5 hours away from each other. But I sort of think there's kind of a little bit of a rivalry here because the Oxford people talk to me all the time about, we got something for Muscle Shoals this year. And so there's kind of this, at least from the Oxford end, I think there's a rivalry kind of aspect to this thing. They're wanting Muscle Shoals. They want to play Muscle Shoals. And this is the biggest game that Oxford has played probably since the 2011 season.
Right.
Probably the biggest football game that they have played in 6 years.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be a huge game at Lamar Field coming up Friday night, and you got Titus Smith Lindsay for Oxford, who's ran for 1,500, 1,600 yards. Gabe Webb a couple of big touchdowns last week, and he's going to become more of a factor down the stretch. And Muscle Shoals knocked Oxford out of the playoffs last year, 31-17, and folks in Oxford have not forgotten that.
They have not, and I think this is to me that might be the best game. We got some great games, but I think that might wind up being the best. That one, along with Opelika and Park Crossing, may be the best 2 6A games this week. Owen Bradley checking back in again from Tallis, who wants to know out of the Montgomery teams in the playoffs, who has the best chance to make it to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Well, there's a lot of different. You got Park Crossing and Wetumpka. If we count them as a Montgomery area team, I think we do. You still got Sidney Lanier in there. Then you go into back down where we were just talking about. You go back and start talking about Catholic of Montgomery.
Right.
And you start talking about Alabama Christian in the playoffs. You start talking about there's a lot of Montgomery teams. I was looking at that. It's ironic he asked that question because I was looking at how well the city of Montgomery is doing in playoff action this year. You know, we haven't even talked about over here in 7A. Lee of Montgomery is still alive. Had that impressive win on the road at Fairhope last week by 3 touchdowns. So Lee, Sidney Lanier, Carver, Alabama Christian, St. James.
Yeah.
Montgomery Academy. We moved down to 3. Montgomery Academy is still there. I mean, virtually everybody in Park Crossing, everybody in Montgomery is still alive. Yeah. But I really think I'm going to say the best chance of going to Bryant-Denny Stadium. I'm going to say Park Crossing.
That's mine. Yeah, Thunderbirds.
Wetumpka, though, could be.
I have been a Park Crossing fan all season. I've had a chance to watch them a couple of times. And to me, when I see Park Crossing, I see all of the elements that it takes to have a state, a team that can play for the state championship.
Their offensive line is as good of a high school offensive line, Tommy, as I've seen.
Yeah, we saw them in the spring. They were good, and they have done nothing to disappoint. But to me, Park Crossing, out of the Montgomery area, that to me is the number one team from that area that has a chance, that we get a chance to see over in Bryant-Denny. Austin 11-0, they will be at Shades Valley. And I mean, man, offensively, Austin has been unstoppable. I don't know if Shades Valley can slow them down, but they've got an outstanding quarterback in Desmond Trotter. I don't think they can outscore Austin, but they could keep it interesting for a while. But when you've got Antonio Robinson, he had 3 catches for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns, ran for another 108 and a touchdown. Then you got Asa Martin, 10 times for 201 last week. You've got 2 weapons in the backfield. Their offensive line is huge. Defensively, they're getting it done. To me, Austin is an outstanding football team, and it's going to take a great football team to knock them off this time.
Yeah, and if you go start looking at our bracket here, if they win and if Pinson Valley wins, which they should be the favorite against Ramsey, that'll be tough. The team that was in the Super 7 last year. We could have a quarterfinal round matchup that could be like a state championship game between Pinson Valley and Austin.
Yeah, Bo Nix is back. Of course, Pinson Valley with a big win last week. They're 11-0. They're hosting Ramsey at 6-5. But Bo Nix, 368 yards and 5 touchdowns last week. So
is that all?
He was a little rusty coming back, and he hopes to work those kinks out and get better.
368 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Off night for him. But I think, like you said, you hate to look ahead, but that could be a dream matchup to watch right there. Oxford again hosting Muscle Shoals. They the winner of that game advances to take on either Clay Chalkville 9-2 or Homewood 10-1.
I know that Homewood has not been playing very good football the last couple of weeks. They were down to Fort Payne last week.
Yeah, 21-0.
And came back and won the game, but they just haven't been playing very good football, to be honest with you, the last couple of weeks. But I think Homewood will rise to the occasion against a very good Clay Chalkville team, and that'll wind up being a great game.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a good one there because, like you said, you've got Homewood stayed undefeated most of the year, but then the last few weeks kind of hitting some rocky spots. So we'll kind of wait and see if they can get the win over Clay Chalkville and move to the next round. Now, let's finish up with Class 7A. We'll look at the matchups, of course. This is when you get down to the Elite 8 in 7A, so we're like a week ahead here.
Yeah, next week they will be in the state semifinals. And then they take a week off.
Right.
They'll have actually about, that state championship game being on Wednesday, they'll actually have
10 days.
10, 11 days to get ready for the state championship. I don't think there's any real surprises in 7A. I think everybody that we thought was going to win won. You might say that Lee going down to beat Fairhope by 3 touchdowns, a little bit surprising, but not really because Lee's got a great team. But I think, no real surprises there. In week, that's probably the only classification where we didn't have any real surprises. But this week, every one of these games, there's 4 games left in 7A. Mm-hmm. Every one of these games is marquee. Auburn, McGill, Tula, William Montgomery, Central Phoenix City, Mountain Brook and Thompson rematch in the regular season, and the marquee game.
Oh yeah,
everybody's been talking about this for about 3 years.
Been begging for this one.
Hoover and Hewitt-Trussville.
Yeah, being played at Trussville. So they're going to get that. Hope there's enough lights on the scoreboard because these two can light it up. Again, Hewitt-Trussville 11-0, Hoover 8-3. Sometimes you look, again, a deceptive record there.
Thompson, IMG, and Grayson, Georgia.
Yeah, that's not too shabby. Paul Tyson of Hewitt-Trussville, last week 20 of 28, 257 and 2 touchdowns, ran for another one. They beat Spain Park 33-21. So he takes them into this next round. And I think that Hoover and Hewitt-Trussville game, and usually when we say it's going to be a shootout, it turns out to be a 14-10 game. But I mean, you got to think that those two offenses out there are going to be fun to watch.
This is kind of the litmus test if you're a Trussville fan.
Absolutely.
Brought in Coach Josh Floyd. You got a new stadium, new school, upgrading the program at every level, trying to get to that high echelon, if we can use that terminology, of 7A football. But you've been in a region with the teams from Gadsden City and the teams from Madison County and Huntsville. So you haven't really had a lot of opportunities to match up with that core Birmingham group of schools like Hoover and Spain Park and Thompson and all those kind of folks. Yeah. And now, and honestly, the big boy of all those through the years has been Hoover.
Right.
And so they've been kind of eyeing each other around 459. Maybe, it's hard to imagine, but only about, 20 miles apart, 15 miles probably. Here it is, Friday night. The hype of this game, I mean, this is big boy Alabama high school football, as big as it gets right here between Hoover and Hewitt-Trussville.
I'm going to tell you, if they move this game to Saturday, you'd have a lot of Auburn and Alabama folks going, hey, don't worry about La Monroe or Mercer. We'll go watch this game.
Absolutely.
I mean, because to me, this game right here is going to be a tremendous one again, Hoover and Hewitt-Trussville. And a lot of great games this week. I mean, you go up and down from Class 1A to 7A, and this is when it gets to be a lot of fun. When you get to the second round of the playoffs, you don't really know what to expect. You just kind of go in there and say, hey, it's going to be some good football games. So we encourage you to go out and watch some. And, John, again, when we get to this point of the year, you start eyeing that Super 7 trip for all these teams, and it gets to be a lot of fun. And you start to think about, matchups in the next rounds. These coaches hate to do that, though.
Yeah, but we can.
We can start looking at those next rounds.
I start looking at this in October.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Early October, I start looking at playoffs. Next round, they can win. That they might win this. They're going to win this. Mm-hmm. We can do that.
All the games
and
are
the coaches
on Friday.
do it too. They just don't.
They won't tell you that.
They won't do it.
All the games on Friday, 7:00. Find you a stadium, and it's funny because talking to some folks that their teams are not playing anymore. They're just, I see them on the street. And they're like, hey, what's the game you'd go to this weekend? Trying to find a good game around to go to, and that's what it's all about, man. When you get to high school football and stadiums are packed and all these folks are coming out, there's going to be some great games.
Some great games. Tommy, you're going to have one of those games. You will be at Lamar Field in Oxford for that 6A second round game between Muscle Shoals and Oxford. Tell folks how they can tune in and catch all the action of that wherever they are around the state.
We will begin our pregame coverage at about 6:30 on Friday night. Game time 7:00, and you can check it out if you're in the area at 97.9 FM. Also 979wvok.com. We are live streaming the game as far as the audio goes. There will be no video live stream, but you can catch all of it no matter where you live. I've got some folks, some friends of mine up in northern Kentucky that will be listening this Friday evening, and we hope they enjoy the broadcast. And as we get toward this point of the year, I know that families around the area, maybe you've got some relatives that go to Oxford, maybe some players. I've heard from some of the parents and grandparents, and we appreciate that. But find you a ball game to go to. And folks, if you're an Oxford fan and you want to go Friday night and you're going to be at Lamar Field, they still sell those little things called a little radio, and you can plug in there and you can listen, and you can keep up with the ball game at the stadium.
And I will be at the Etowah Brooks game at Jim Glover Field in Attala. Looking forward to being there. Great game in the 5A second round. And then we'll have the highlights of that game. Plus, we got crews here in East Alabama at TV 24 with our Pigskin Roundup show, 10:30 Friday night. And you can watch that, TV24.tv, anywhere around the state of Alabama. You can also cable channel 80 on the charter cable systems all around the state. You can check us out there. We've got folks coming to Ranburne, Oxford. We got folks going to Cedar Bluff, Center, Piedmont, Weaver, Sachs, Etowah, Hokes Bluff. We're going to be at all those big games in East Alabama with highlights, and we've got our big F&M Bank Scholarship Spirit Toss coming up live in the parking lot Friday night at TV 24. So we're going to have that going on. Jonathan Nix, the head football coach of the Pleasant Valley Raiders, is going to be with us reviewing their season. That's a program that's making a lot of big strides.
Absolutely.
Went from 0 wins to 2 wins last year to 4 wins this year. And if they double it again next year, that means 8.
We may be talking about them here.
No pressure. Coach Nix, but we'll be talking with him about that possibility, and we'll be on from 10:30 till 12:30, and we'll be doing this number right here.
That's
every
right.
score in the state, all the brackets, and all the information you want to know about high school football, particularly in East Alabama, but really this time of year it's statewide. We'll have that for you at TV24.tv with the Pigskin Roundup on Friday night.
And let me explain something. If you like high school football and you're a fan, there is no better scoreboard out there in the state of Alabama. They go 2 hours. They break everything down for us. By the time they finish up, they can tell you about all the matchups for the next week. And you got folks, like Chase Robinson that's joining us now. And Chase is out there in the field. Also, you got Gerhard Methengani. You got Carl Brady. You got
Chad Barnett. Game of the week will be at your game with all
so many
complete coverage of the Oxford Muscle Shoals game with post-game interviews and all that. Chase, you mentioned he'll be at the Cedar Bluff game. He'll be at the Cedar Bluff South Lamar game, and he'll also be at Cherokee County for that Cherokee County and Wilson game.
How many folks you have pulling off the scoreboard every Friday night? Roundup.
Well, we to make that show happen last year, I haven't done the count this year. I know last year we had 23 people.
There you go.
To make that happen. All passionate about high school football.
Man.
So we invite you to join in with us on Friday night at 10:30.
Check out the live stream and find a way to watch it because it'll be worth your time. I can promise you that. Hey, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of High School Football Alabama. Next week, how about that? Round 3 we're getting folks ready for, and as we continue to dwindle down and make our path toward the Super 7.
And next week we're going to come to you on Wednesday, which is the day before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And Tommy and I will be on a fast.
That's right.
So we're going to be on a fast so that we are able to eat all that we want on Thanksgiving. So we're going to go on a fast for about 2 days so we can empty our stomach and be ready to go full blasted at kickoff on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I'll finish the first family function on Monday so I can Tuesday, Wednesday, and then pick back up Thursday. Yeah, it's kind of like a dead recruiting period where you have to just take a little break in between, so that'll be,
Absolutely.
We'll be ready to go. Hey, guys, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks for our sponsors again, Kevin Moon at Cheehaw Music Company. Go by now and like their page and tell them you appreciate them bringing you High School Football Alabama. Folks, if you are a business out there, you'd like your advertisement being heard by, 1,300 folks or so that are passionate about high school football, then let us know. We'll be glad to get the information out here on High School Football Alabama. We'll see you next Wednesday, and get ready for more High School Football Alabama as we will join you then. Have a great weekend, everybody.